Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm very, very excited. We have a great show here today. My name is Frank Verdi. I work at Alliant Insurance Services. We are based here in New England. With me today, I have a great panel. I have Stephanie Miller from my organization as well. I sit in the Boston office. Stephanie sits in our Portland, Maine office. And then we have two wonderful guests who are joining us today. We have Jocelyn Barasa, who is a breast cancer survivor, and we are so grateful to have her on our show today. So thank you, Jocelyn, for taking the time out of your schedule to join us and share your story today.
My
And then I
pleasure.
am so grateful to have Nicole Marone join us from Susan G. Komen, which is, as everybody knows, one of the top breast cancer, associations and organizations out there today. So really excited. So let's give a round of applause, Stephanie, for our guests for joining us today.
Thank
So yeah, so let's talk about this show a little bit today. So um, Stephanie and I sit in the New England market, and we really just wanted to get our name out there. We wanted to do something different. Honestly, we're tired of attending webinars that are on boring topics, and every single firm is doing the same thing, and they get repetitive, and you kind of get podcast burnout, and you get webinar burnout. So we wanted to kind of do something fun. We want this to be talk show oriented. So we created a kind of a pun or a play on words, friends with benefits. So we all work in the benefits arena. So we wanted to create a show. We're calling it Friends with Benefits. So we're hoping to have friends on, spend a half hour with you monthly and talk about topics that are important to you, that are meaningful to you. So we're really looking for this show to be um, about you and for you. So we really want you guys, and the feedback that you provide is going to be so important to us. So any topic you want to hear about, you want us to talk about, anybody that you want us to join. If anybody wants to join and come on and talk for a half hour with us, we love it. We really want this to be a fun, interactive podcast. We want this to be enjoyable, and we want everybody to have fun. We do not want this to be a snooze fest for the next half hour. And our topic today, I think, is really poignant. It's very topical and current because October, if everybody is aware, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we thought we'd kick off our first podcast with talking about breast cancer awareness, and really excited to have two panelists here today to really talk to us about Susan G. Komen. Really, leading top, breast cancer organization. And then we have a breast cancer survivor, Jocelyn Barasa, who's joined us today, too, to kind of tell us her story. And we really want you to walk away from this podcast today with a better understanding of what you can do to take care of yourself, understand breast cancer and what to do, how to cope with it, how to deal with that scary message that you might get at your doctor, or even a scare that you might have because you think you might have breast cancer, even if it was a hopeful knock on wood, it turns out to be negative. But we want to talk really openly today about breast cancer in general, and we want to make sure that we get the topic out there. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we know it's 1 month a year that we get together to talk about breast cancer, but it's something I think we need to think about all year round. You should be giving yourself breast exams. You should be having your mammographies. You should be having your screenings and your testings. And we wanted to make sure that people know what those are and how to obtain them. And quite frankly, what they should be looking for. And
Well, Frank, don't steal Nicole's thunder.
I'm not. So, and the other thing, yeah, and the only thing I just wanted to throw in there, a plug before I turn it over to Nicole to really talk us through Susan G. Komen, is I just wanted to, as a man, most men think that they're invincible and that they can't get breast cancer, and this is a woman's disease. It's really not. And I was sharing my story before we joined today that I actually had a male breast cancer scare a few years ago. I found a couple lumps. Got very nervous. Went in, my throat, I was just completely upset. I cried. I was really didn't even know what to do. Went for a mammography. Never thought as a man I'd have to do that, and I did. It turned out I had two cystic lumps. They turned out, thank God, not to be cancerous, but I had to go for, they did find something on the mammographies, and I had to go back for a subsequent testing and had to have a sonogram done, and thank God it all turned out negative. But it was very scary and touch and go for a couple of weeks. I, was losing sleep and scared. So I just want to leave, the men listening to this podcast today, or even the women that have, special men in their lives, or a husband or a boyfriend, or a significant other, that men can get breast cancer, and men should be just as actively involved in breast cancer awareness and screenings as women are. And I want to make sure that, that message is, out there and received today. So that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. We really want to hear from our panelists today. So with that, I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to make introductions, and I'm going to introduce Nicole Marone from Susan G. Komen. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on. Anytime I get an opportunity to share breast cancer awareness, we're moving the needle closer in the fight against breast cancer. It's really important that people are aware of it. We talk about, exactly like you said, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but sometimes people just say, oh yes, I know what that is, or I've seen the ribbons. But taking action is really, really important. And so being able to be on your podcast today means a lot, especially I know here in the Northeast, we have a very high incidence of breast cancer amongst our population. So it's really important that we share, key critical information.
Yeah, so really great. Thank you for joining us. So can you talk to us about Susan G. Komen and, how the organization came to be and kind of what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always start off with Susan was an actual person, not just a name that was put out there. So Susan sort of started this entire breast cancer awareness journey that everybody, all these nonprofits are all part of. Back in the early 80s, she was going through breast cancer. She had metastatic breast cancer and unfortunately passed in the early 80s. But she and her sister had talked about how awful it was to go through a breast cancer treatment and how patients were cared for at that time, which wasn't much. So her sister started this organization in her name, with $200 and got a group of friends together in Texas. And that's sort of where we were born as an organization. And the rest is sort of history. We just honored our 40 years last year. And in that time, have made great strides in the fight against breast cancer.
Yeah, it's an amazing organization. In my past lives at, several organizations that I worked at, we did breast cancer walks and marches and support, and we actually had breast cancer screenings on site. So really great organization. So I really appreciate, you coming on today and talking about it. So can we talk a little bit about what breast cancer screenings entail, what they look like, and really what should a person be doing to be proactive in managing their health and to check? And I know some people just think, I don't have to think about this till I'm 39, or I don't have to think about this till I'm 40. But with a family history, I think it's important to, to do certain things earlier rather than later, and to take an active role in your health. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you should do or you should think about, and really what does a screening look like, and what does a self one look like, and then really what does more of a clinical look like?
Yeah. So yes, first off, I always say, know your body. When something's not right, whether you're doing your own self breast exam or, however that is, if something's not right, you need to seek medical attention. I think sometimes people get scared and think, oh, it's nothing, and push it off, which actually is worse. It's better to get it checked out and have your mind at ease, or early detection, of course, saves lives. So if there is something, there's so much more resources for you to move forward in your breast cancer journey. And, your outcomes are much, much higher if you catch something early. And so it's really important, of course, for those under 40 to make sure you know your body. We also have different on Komen.org. There's a whole section on, what to look for if you have questions, those kinds of things. So it's really important that you do that, as well as if you're 40 and over, of course, mammograms are covered. Making sure you're getting your annual mammogram, which again, many people put off. You have other things going on in your life, and it's just one of those things you forget about. We saw that quite a bit during COVID, of course, for various reasons, and unfortunately, pushing it off can result in something worse for some women. But making sure you get those mammograms, making sure you're listening to your doctors. going for second opinions if you don't feel you're getting the right opinion from those doctors, and following through on the continuum of care. And again, something that we talked about a little bit earlier is, women get it, men get it. Men have breast tissue. Hate to tell you, men, but you have breast tissue. You might not think you do.
I don't know what
you
you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about.
So 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. So when you think of,
Oh, wow.
you and 70 of your friends, if you're a woman, somebody's going to get it. Men, it's 1 in 100, which may sound higher, but when you think of all the population out there, it's still prevalent, as well as, I know earlier we were discussing a little bit about the BRCA gene. There's also a misperception that, of course, BRCA genes are a key indicator that you will most likely get breast cancer. So you can proactively decide what course you want to take. And that can mean anything to a million different women, how that's going to work, and working with your oncologist and your doctor on that. But also, and that is carried through the male line. So making sure that especially if you're of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, you have a very high chance of having the BRCA gene.
Wow.
Doesn't mean that other people wouldn't. However, what's an alarming fact is 90% of breast cancers have no family history.
Really?
So 90% of diagnosis of women who have breast cancer never had a mom, a sister.
Yeah,
a dad.
and I would have thought it would have been family history driven, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, huh?
No, and I think
Wow.
that's a misunderstanding when BRCA was discovered, is that people thought, oh, well, that's the sure thing. If you have BRCA, or you have some sort of gene, that's just going to, let you know. But that's not the case at all, 90%. So therefore, until we find a cure, getting your mammogram and knowing your body is the best way of, kind of moving forward in the breast cancer journey.
So 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. Is it really that high a number?
It is, and that's
Wow.
gone up. I mean, gosh, back in the early 80s, I think it was like 1 in 4. It was
Really?
really, really terrible.
Now,
And
is it higher in the North? Now, I always thought, I guess I grew up in the Northeast, that certain pockets of the Northeast have even higher incidence than that, right? I mean, is 1 in 8 like a national average? But really, it could even be higher depending on where you live.
Correct. So 1 in 8 is what the standard across the board. Of course, there's certain pockets that have higher incidence of breast cancer. Again, in the Northeast, it is very prevalent, very, very high incidence.
Wow.
So why that is, we're not sure. We're still working on that. We have research going on. Komen is the largest funder of breast cancer research behind the US government. We've contributed over $1 billion
Wow.
in research, and currently have about 15 million happening in New England alone. So lots going on, a lot of research. A large part of our research is focused on metastatic breast cancer, is when breast cancer actually goes to other parts of your body. And at this point, there is no cure. There's only certain drugs that can prolong. So our very big focus is that population, as well as other cancer drugs. And we've been part of all the major drug breakthroughs that have happened since our inception. So a lot going on, a lot moving forward that we still have to do. But there is hope. It's making sure that people understand, don't be scared.
And
get help.
It should start with a self-exam, right? I mean, you should always constantly check yourself self-exam wise. And if you find anything, and to your point, I mean, it's almost like our motto that we live by today. If you see something, say something. So if you feel something, you do something about it. So
Yes.
talk to me about, like, I always thought that all screenings for breast cancer were covered under my insurance coverage and under ACA, Obamacare. I thought that it had to be covered for screenings, and and I thought everything was covered. Talk to us about what is the misconception, because I don't think that everything's covered for breast cancer screenings, and I know you guys are fighting the fight to try to change that in terms of legislation. And as an employer, I can talk to my broker and I can talk to my insurance companies and really put some pressure on the insurance companies to maybe change some of this. Can you talk us a little bit about what you guys are doing on that front to kind of change what's happening in the industry?
Absolutely. And that's sort of what sets Susan G. Komen a little bit apart from other breast cancer organizations. Not to say one's better than the other. That just is, this is part of our DNA, is that we have always been formed on the notion that we will support research, but we will also address patient care needs, and that will never change. And part of the patient care needs can be anything financial assistance to our helpline, to patient navigation, so people don't give up in the continuum of care, but also advocacy. A lot of people don't know we are huge advocates. We just had 300 people down on Capitol Hill in June, knocking on doors of all those senators, legislators, making sure they hear our voices. And sometimes we do partner with other cancer organizations, and it's not breast cancer organizations. Sometimes, it could be any type of breast cancer or cancer organization, I should say. But most recently, I was just at an action day in Massachusetts at the State House, and we were knocking on their doors because mammograms, that we talk about, mammograms are pretty much covered. And if they're not covered, Komen can help cover those. We want to make sure everyone's getting at least their mammogram.
Amen.
However, if something is seen on that, you have to go to get an MRI or an ultrasound. Usually there's a next step called a diagnostic. And that is not covered across the board. Most health companies don't necessarily cover that. So it is something that we were knocking on doors. We have a bill forward in Massachusetts. In fact, we've had it covered through our efforts. 20 states have approved it in the United States. So 20 other states have already approved covering this. I know in Connecticut, they have approved it. So Massachusetts, we're knocking on their doors saying, hey, we really need your support on this bill. We need to get it passed. It's a very low impact on the insurance company, but it could save lives. Because what happens is women, and I can't say across the board, but many women will get their mammogram because it is covered. Something will be seen, and then they don't go back because they can't afford the diagnostic. And by the time they go back, it's too late. It's already metastasized, or it's gone to a later stage of breast cancer. So, we want to make sure that the government has a responsibility of addressing breast cancer needs as well on that front.
So, amen. So the message that I'm taking away from this conversation, the last part of this conversation, is, as a broker, Stephanie, we should be talking to our clients, our prospects, and really all of our vendors, because we deal with all the major carriers. They're our preferred partners, Nicole, and we should be talking to them about and putting some pressure on them from our side to see what we can do to change this, because it sounds like this is a really important change that needs to happen, because you need to treat the entire thing holistically, not just a piece of it. You really need to take this and see this all the way through to the end. And I think, Jocelyn, my conversations with Stephanie, that you ran into some problems when you were getting your treatments where some things weren't covered, and you got some pushback too. So I don't know if you want to jump in and kind of talk a little bit about that, but I know you had some problems as well. So I think you actually experienced what Nicole's talking about.
Yeah, we had insurance, thank God. But even with me hitting my individual plan for the year and hitting our family deductible and insurance covering a huge amount, we still, were in debt, tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's terrible. Yeah, we paid it off, but it was definitely hard because I wasn't working, because I was like, couldn't, and we didn't budget for it. And then COVID happened so soon after. Then I was a personal trainer and bartender at the time. So gyms weren't open, restaurants weren't open, have a lot of money coming in. So, I'm fortunate that I, was in a place financially that this wasn't necessarily earth-shattering, but it was I definitely could spend that amount of money on something.
Tens of thousands of dollars is a lot of money. I mean, even if you're wealthy, and that's a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money for anybody, and to pay that out of pocket when it should have been covered as part of your medical plan, it saved your life. obviously, and you wouldn't go back and do it otherwise. And thank God you had the resources to get it done. But to Nicole, to your point, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people who aren't as fortunate as Jocelyn, who can't afford to get that treatment or can't afford to get those things done in our country, and probably end up having, bad outcomes because of it, because they don't get the care that they need.
Absolutely. And, we had a few breast cancer survivors come with us to speak to the legislators, and you just hearing their stories. One woman had to have some sort of MRI type of procedure that was with insurance, was still $2,500 out of pocket. And she said, I'm fortunate enough that, I can pay for it. It's still dug into our budget because, I was sending my kids to camp and doing other things. She's like, let alone the underserved population that can't afford any of this. And she has, for her sort of journey in breast cancer, she actually has to go every 6 months for an MRI. And so that's anywhere from, $600 to $800 that she was paying out of pocket. That can go up to $1,300 for some people twice a year. That takes a toll. That really takes a toll.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'd much rather spend it on a vacation laying on the beach drinking pina coladas, right? That's a much better spend of my time getting the heck out of here and going to, getting some vitamin D, down south or something. So that's just not it's just not okay. So I'm glad that we're talking about this today. So I want to circle back at the end, Nicole, and give you the opportunity to kind of tell us how we can get involved, where we can go, where we can look, some of the initiatives corporate wise that we can get involved with, because I want to make sure that the folks that are listening can understand where they can go next. I would totally welcome talking about this again. I'm kind of sad now that we got into our first podcast. It's only a half hour, because I think we could talk for an hour about this, because it's so fascinating and honestly heart-wrenching and heartbreaking to me. So I think it's a topic that needs to be talked about. But I want to give Jocelyn the opportunity to kind of share her story, and I want Stephanie to kind of walk us through that with Jocelyn, because I think it's important for people to hear what it was like to go through this. And thank God, Jocelyn, you came out the other side and you're okay. I'm so glad to see you here. You look healthy. You look fabulous. I hope I look as good as you. And I never even been through breast cancer so I'm really just, so happy that you're with us and everything turned out great.
Yeah, definitely happy to be here. I'm happy to go into questions. I just kind of wanted to say, I had a thought, right, like the last discussion that I wanted to add. Even after you've beat cancer or like paid off your medical debt from the, whatever procedure you have itself, the bills don't stop. I still have to go get lab work done every 6 months to check my recurrent score and white blood cell count. And those bills obviously are like a drop in the bucket compared to the big one that you get, but the aftercare also like dips into your HSA and your insurance and medical bills. It's not really over.
Yeah, that's a really amazing point, because I think people just think of it in terms of, I have a breast mastectomy, I have a reconstruction, and I'm done. It doesn't end there. I mean, it literally is ongoing. It's testing, it's PET scans, it's a lifelong commitment to your health. And I think that's a really important thing to point out. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think people don't think of it in those terms, and it's important to think of it. It is a lifelong commitment for your health, and it's something you're going to have to keep an eye on for the rest of your life once you have that diagnosis. Even if you do beat it and you are clear and everything comes back negative, it's still something you need to look at for the rest of your life.
Yeah, let's face it, if you don't do the diagnostic part and things get worse, or if you don't go do the lab work and the aftercare that you need and something happens again, that only drives up healthcare costs for your employer and or for us taxpayers. And then if you are an employer that has some cancer patients, I mean, then your employee, that cost has been passed down to your other employees. So it's just better up front if we can get some of those laws passed for the diagnostic part to be covered.
Hashtag preach, girl. All I'm going to tell you is, and I mean this, like, if you take care of this, as early as possible, and you pay for the treatments, the scans, I should say, and the screenings up front, it could save the employer a lot of money long term, because you're not going to have, maybe you get it early enough where you don't have to have expensive radiation or expensive chemo and other things, because we're able to detect it much earlier and have it removed or have it treated before it becomes a big issue. Or maybe if you have the BRCA gene and you decide to take, action there, that could save you down the road from having a lot more expenses, down the road. So I hate to think of this in terms of finance or financials, but cancer is expensive. It's a big business in this country. It's a, pharmaceuticals. It's a big business in this country, and it costs employers and or the employee or the person going through this, if they have no insurance, a lot of money. And even if they have insurance, we heard straight from Jocelyn's mouth today, and Nicole, you still can have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. And there's things that are not covered, especially the ongoing screenings, that you have to pay for out of pocket. And like I said, that needs to change in this country. So anybody listening from Aetna, Cigna, United, Blue Cross, Humana, who is ever listening to this podcast on my, LinkedIn, I'm coming for you, because we need to talk about this, because this needs to change in the future.
Well, let's introduce Jocelyn. So
yeah.
I met Jocelyn actually through a friend. It's her cousin, but I attend the same gym from time to time. And that's how I really got to know Jocelyn. And we were walking on the treadmill one day, and she shared her story with me. And I had no idea that had happened. And I like teared up. And it was, it really hit home, because we had already talked about doing this podcast in October. So I was like, oh my gosh, would you mind sharing your story publicly? And of course, knowing Jocelyn like I do, she's like, yes, I would love it. So it's great that she's going to share her story. So my first few questions, how did you, I guess, when did you detect it? How old were you? Like, start from the beginning as to what transpired, because that's what really like hit home for me.
Yeah. I found the lump in my breast in 2019. I would say the biggest reason I found it the way I did, because it was so small, was because I was breastfeeding my baby at the time. So I would reach into my bra and pull my boob out to, feed him. And every time I made that motion, there was a hard, kind of felt like two frozen peas stuck together, kind of. And at first I thought it might have been ductal, full of milk or whatever, clogged duct, something like that. But what started getting me really concerned was that whether I, had just woke up in the morning and I was really full and needed to feed him, or, it was post feeding and I was completely drained of milk, this particular lump did not change, So I was 37 at the time. And to answer your question, you can stop me at any time, but
because you could have just assumed, right? Like you just said, oh, I'm breastfeeding. It's
right. It's my deodorant, something's clogged up. I mean, that's what I would have assumed probably myself.
Well, what you really get checked? What prompted that?
So I come from a long line of breast cancer survivors. My mother is a stage 2 survivor, and my grandmother on my mother's side is a stage 0 survivor. And on top of that, my cousin, who actually I don't technically share bloodline with because she was adopted, but we were always very close and grew up together. She died from stage 4 breast cancer at 40. And that was going on. I think she made it. I found the lump originally in March, and my cousin made it to May. But I was also watching everything that was going on with her. and her 3 children as a single mother. And it was very strange. It was like, as soon as I felt that lump and started really thinking about it, it was like, I've never had a stronger gut feeling in my life. And I wanted to go and have it checked out. There's a lot of rumors, you can't get breast cancer when you're in your 30s. You can't get breast cancer when you're breastfeeding, like your estrogen's too low. And, you can't have a mammogram when you're breastfeeding, stuff like that. I even went so far. I mean, somebody in my OBGYN was like, well, why don't we just wait until you're done breastfeeding and then we can get this checked out? And I thought, well, this is my second baby. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I breastfed her till she was like 2 years old. So, that could be a year and a half from now, So I talked to my PCP and he kind of said the same thing. Like, we don't like to mammographize lactating breasts because it's hard to see anything. But if you feel a lump and you know where it is and you have a pinpoint, like, let's get you in for a breast ultrasound. So we scheduled that. I went in, I was by myself. I'm on the ultrasound table, and the technician like brought the scope or whatever it's called around, and she's like, is this what you're talking about right here? And I was like, yep, that's it. She's like, I'm gonna go get the radiologist. And she left. And then she came back in and she said, we're gonna have you get a mammogram, like right here and now. So I was like, I thought you couldn't give me a mammogram, and they were like, well, we're going to. And so they brought me right in and gave me one, which I can totally understand why they don't prefer to, because it looks like a thick spider web. Like, if they didn't have a focal point, they wouldn't have known where. It wasn't visible on the screen. But then, of course, I had the mammogram and they said, the radiologist wants to talk to you. I said, okay. And she basically said, we need you to come in tomorrow morning and do a biopsy, but I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've been doing this for a long time and this looks like cancer.
Oh,
so
God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That had to be that had to be like the scariest moment in this world, especially having 2 young children and you were all alone during it. I'm so sorry, Jocelyn, that you had to go through that. That's so horrible. I feel terrible. You can make me cry. I feel terrible. Like, to have to go through that yourself, to go through that by yourself, and to get that. That's what, to me, it's one of the scariest things to hear, the C word.
Well, I never went to an appointment by myself after that. But I think a lot of my family thought that I was kind of projecting and being a little too hyper vigilant because of my cousin and the grief that was bringing.
See something, say something. I mean, honestly, thank God you had the wherewithal to know something wasn't right with your body and to go and do that. I applaud you. Honestly, that was brave of you and smart of you. Very smart of you.
One of the things that stood out with me in the conversation with Jocelyn was, I mean, she's a big fan of breastfeeding, because she said she breastfed her oldest child till she was 2. So, and there was a story around the breastfeeding, and that was kind of, I think, not just the fact that you had cancer, because that's a horrible feeling, but I guess tell us about the breastfeeding experience and what happened.
Oh, you mean with the connection that I was able to make with the person?
Yeah, and insurance, what they would cover, and yes, what happened.
So I'm projecting all of my emotions towards the fact that my oncologist told me, you need to stop breastfeeding right now. And I was like, I don't want to, I'm not ready. Like, my son needs this from me. Like, what were you like? It's silly thinking about it now, but at the time I never realized, like, she said, I prefer not to do a surgical procedure, whether it's a lumpectomy or a double mastectomy, whatever you end up deciding, when there's breast milk, like, ejecting from the, site where I start with the surgery with the syringes. So the you know, if you can just get that milk gone, you know, we're like, that's what you have to do. And I was like furious. Anyway, so I submitted to my insurance company to see if they would cover donor milk from a like donor bank. There's one at Maine Medical Center in Portland, and they denied my claim. So I then was like, well, I'm gonna fight this claim. I talked to my oncologist, my son's pediatrician, the head of lactation at Maine Medical Center. They all had written letters. So I'm trying to navigate the situation, and, you know, given 4-year-old, you know, 6-month-old, you have cancer. My husband's business was like really taking off at the time, but because of that, he was working really long days. My sister had just had twins, like, and then I'm getting all this paperwork that from insurance, being like, oh, well, you want to fight this claim? Well, we need to, it was like, I was so overwhelmed. And I almost got to the point where I was like, I mean, all right, fine, you got me, cancer. Like, we'll just, you know, formula feed and I'll be mad. But I ended up, Bettina Pearson, who was the head of lactation at Maine Med at the time, who was an angel, called me one day and she said, I'm going to give you somebody's phone number. She was like, that's all I'm going to do. But I think it's a good idea for you to give this woman a call. So I call, and this angel on earth, Amelia, said, I went to the bank, the milk bank at Maine Med, and I tried to donate my breast milk because I am producing so much more than my son needs. But I had cancer when I was a child. She had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they denied her donation because of that. So we worked out a deal that she was going to provide me with her excess breast milk for my son for 1 year. And ironically, her husband was a phlebotomist at the Red Cross, which was right next door to the restaurant I was working at the time. So every couple of weeks, he would show up with a cooler full of breast milk, and I would take it home and I would give it to my son, Philip. So that grand gesture of hers was tremendous in giving me some power back, and also, you know, wanting Philip to get the benefits of breast milk. And Amelia's husband had immigrated to Maine, and he said that the village that he grew up in, it was really common for women to share breast milk, and that you establish a brotherhood if you and another baby drink the same milk. So they were very just giving and you know, comfortable doing so. And you know, I would give them hand-me-downs because my son is a tank. And you know, sometimes I'd bake them something or give them stuff from my garden. And we somewhat keep in touch now, like via social media. I always send her a Christmas card. It was a really beautiful silver lining that came out of it. And it really gave me some of the control I felt that I'd lost back. Like I had a solution.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. And I didn't even know that that was an issue and that insurance companies didn't cover this. This has been really eye-opening for me, because that would seem so elementary.
Extremely expensive. It's
it would sound like it would just be like, it would make sense. Like it's just something that should be covered. Like they cover, it's so weird. They cover such other crazy stuff. Like they'll cover the freezing of eggs if somebody has gone through, you know, before they start chemo, if they have breast cancer, so that they can have children, because it might impact their infertility down the road. But you know, something as simple as life-giving milk for a child, to not cover it just seems crazy to me.
I was ready to go on a crusade, but I just didn't have the time
No, if you shouldn't,
much
I mean,
on
that's
my plate.
crazy. You're not feeling good. You're going through all this craziness, and to have to do on top of the 500 the other things you're probably balancing at the time, trying to
Yeah.
keep your mental sanity, to have to fight, you know, the 100-pound gorilla, because the insurance companies, let's face it, are huge, and they can bury you in red tape if they want to. You know, Stephanie and I do that every day, and it's no dig at the insurance companies. It's just it's their way. They've been doing it the same way for, you know, probably hundreds of years at this point, or hundreds of plus year. You know, they've been doing it this way, and they, you know, it take, and you know, Nicole, it takes a lot to change the status quo, you know, in this industry. So unfortunately, you know, you had to go. I mean, my heart breaks. That's just heartbreaking that you had to go through all that.
Nicole, is that is the breast milk challenge an issue that your organization is, I guess, fighting for? Just curious.
That I would have to ask our advocacy on that specific front, but Jocelyn's story is something that I'm happy that glad she shared it, because, you know, especially what I hear quite often is women that are going through, you know, breastfeeding. Thank goodness she was very, you know, vocal in going and getting help. A lot of times we've heard stories of being dismissed. Oh, you're breastfeeding. It's just, you know, like she said, it's a clogged duct. It's this, it's that. You know, and it happened to a very close friend of mine. And unfortunately, she had it pushed off. And, you know, unfortunately, she ended up recently passing from breast cancer. But it was her third child. And, you know, they just, you know, especially being under 40, people think, you know, not people, but they tend to get dismissed a lot. You know, women get dismissed a lot. And, you know, breast cancer can happen at a very young age. And unfortunately, you know, because very similar to men, by the time that you get found that you have breast cancer, you know, you've gone around, and now it's progressed. You know, men is, because they're not always aware, push it off. Women are there trying to advocate, and you're listening to your doctor saying it's nothing. You're okay, well, then it's nothing. You know, you trust your doctor. You've been going to your doctor for years. Not realizing that exactly the same as what Jocelyn said, know your body. And then, of course, making sure you have the help. Jocelyn, you are an extremely strong woman, to have gone through that. Having to deal with cancer on top of life is impossible for a lot of people, and having that support system is really, really important. And, you know, if you don't have that, I will say Komen does have psychosocial support, whether that's for someone like Jocelyn or even the caregivers. Caregivers go through a lot. You know, when you're helping someone go through cancer, it's a lot mentally, because you're trying to absorb their angst. You're trying to be the happy, smiley one, or at least be there as a, you know, sort of a sounding board. But it is important being an advocate, and knowing what it is. And for Jocelyn not to give up and being able to have that, you know, sort of that angel come in and help her out was, you know, the way it was meant to be. But that paperwork, we hear that all the time. You know, they get that paper. I get paperwork just on general stuff, and I get very confused, let alone when it's something that you're, you know, your child, it's something that it's important to you and you want this to happen. Why is it so hard?
It is. You know what? I say this all the time. Obviously, you can tell I have a big personality and I'm not very shy, but I was not supposed to work in insurance. I always found insurance boring. Like, this is not what I wanted to do when I grow up. I wanted to party plan or do something more fun or be an interior designer, or, you know, here's my gay side coming out. But I totally wanted to be like something way more creative. But the way that I feel that I make a difference in this industry is that I personally, for my clients, they all know I never take no for an answer. I will throw down with whoever I need to do to get stuff done. And one of the things that I feel like I've made a difference for is that, you know, I will go to the insurance companies for somebody like Jocelyn, that's one of my clients, you know, members, and fight with the insurance companies and tell them how to go to the New York, you know, the New York State or the Massachusetts State insurance department to get stuff paid, or I'll throw down with everybody on the insurance side to see what I can do to get something paid. But not everybody has that, and it's very overwhelming when you're sick and you don't feel good, you don't have the fight in you. Plus you're taking care of small children or your house or, listen, mommies are not allowed to get sick. They're just not allowed. Like the father can be sick for 2 days and crawl up in a ball. It's fine. The mommies cannot get sick. So it's crazy. I don't know how you guys did it. So I don't know how you did it, Jocelyn. I commend you. So I just
not only did she come out on the other side, but this woman
more fabulous than probably she went in, because she looks fabulous.
you should see her. She is amazing, and she works with young girls in the gym. She does personal training with them, and some of the girls are young, like not just high school, but younger than that. She does I think it's a group fitness for young girls.
And team building for weightlifting kind of thing.
Yeah. And so her body is pristine. Yeah.
Yeah, you look fabulous. God bless you. You look fabulous. So we're on 44 minutes. So obviously when we went over, I knew we would, because this topic is so wonderful. And obviously I never shut up. I just keep going. We have like a couple more minutes, as long as you guys are okay with time wise. I just wanted to have Nicole kind of talk through some of the resources that are available. And as an employer or as an individual, how do I get involved with Susan G. Komen to get this, to deal with, breast cancer and to get out the support necessary that's out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Komen.org, which is listed there, is really phenomenal. We have resources across the board, whether you have questions about breast cancer, whether you have questions for someone going through breast cancer, whether you've gone through breast cancer, you're going through it, anything that you can think of, we have it. I guess it can also be a little bit overwhelming, but just basic about what the drugs are, or research. What are we doing in research? So I suggest everyone go there. It can outline everything that, we offer, all the wonderful resources, because no one should go through breast cancer alone.
No.
That's sort of what we pride ourselves on. When others look away, we lean in. We are there. We are there to help. Yes, we are here to raise funds and do other things to make sure that we continue all these resources. But there's a reason we have these resources, to make sure that no matter where you live, it doesn't matter whether you're urban, suburban, rural, these resources are for you. There is something for everybody. We have lots of virtual help. So go there. I strongly suggest it. And then how can you get involved? There's a lot of ways to get involved.
I did Fab Over 40 last year. That's a fundraiser for Susan G, correct?
Yeah. So very exciting. We
60 days of separation.
So we're very excited. You can definitely volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers. You can be an advocate. You don't have to be a breast cancer survivor, but if you are, we have a whole advocate side that you can sign up. Even if, like I said, if you're not, you can sign up, and there's different things that'll be sent to you that you can send. It's pre-written to your legislator saying, this is what we're working on in your state. Just here's the email, just send it directly out. We write it for you. As well as joining, either one of our signature events. We have walks and races across the US, or we have a lot of employee engagement. This was sort of a new area that we really expanded this past year. And that's anything from, people do dress down days to pink out days to, in October, there's a lot going on.
Oh.
Yep, ribbons. Mother's Day is a very big, May is a very big month. It's Women's Health Month. So there are many ways. Definitely reach out to me. I can talk you through. We customize too. What works in your workplace might not work in someone else's workplace. But raising awareness and engaging, of course, health is a really big part of most organizations. They most likely have to do something or want to do something, whether that's in community engagement or raising awareness. We also do lunch and learns, where we just have educational seminars that we can give to any company, as long as you want, as short as you want. We can invite a mission staff, a researcher. Our goal is to of course raise awareness, educate. That's really important. That's how we're going to slow this process down as we work on critical research to end this forever.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So
Yeah.
we're getting to the top of, really, I think we're almost on 48 minutes. So we definitely ran over, but I think it's a great topic and I'm so glad that we did. And I just had so much fun with you guys today. And I know breast cancer, you shouldn't say that, oh, we had fun, but I really had fun with you guys today. I think this was a really great first podcast for us. You know, obviously, you know, we want to have more of these. We want to have topics that are, you know, are meaningful for folks. Get involved with breast cancer. I will say that a lot of employers have benefit advocate centers or health advocate services or something tied to their medical plans. Use them. They're great resources. Obviously, reach out to Susan G. Komen, or, you know, other breast cancer organizations around you and in your area. Get involved, get your screenings, do your breast exams, and be vigilant, because it's very important that you stay on top of this. And if anybody is listening to this podcast wants to get in touch with Stephanie or I, please reach out to us via email. You can call us, email us, hit us up on LinkedIn, whatever's most convenient for you. Let us know what topics you want to hear about. Let us know what things you want us to talk about. And we really thank you, Jocelyn and Nicole, for joining us today. We really, you know, it's fabulous, and you guys are fabulous. And this was just an absolutely unbelievable event. And I'm just so grateful you guys could be here today. Anything you want to add, Stephanie?
If you feel something, do something.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So you guys are fabulous. We love you. Thank you so much for joining our first podcast. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again. And Jocelyn, thank you for sharing your brave story. You're a rock star. You're unbelievable. And I'm really, really sorry you went through all this, but I'm so grateful you're here and you're healthy.
For it.
Yeah, and you're fabulous, and keep being fabulous and keep on it, because we appreciate you. We really do.
Anytime. I loved
All right.
it. I had a lot of fun. So
Great.
Guys,
Thank
really,
you, guys. Thank you,
Thank
Nicole.
you.
Thank
No,
you,
thank
Stephanie,
you.
for coordinating. Have a great day, guys.
you too.